No, not in my office.
Okay. Check on the desk and everything just to make sure. All right, we'll move then to Pima County. We've got Michelle maybe with us. Not sure if she is. Looks like Michelle Montano is with us. And that looks like who we have from Pima County at this time. But I think we'll be hearing from Michelle a little bit later. So, all right. We'll go ahead and we'll move on to City of Tucson.
So I'll start out for City of Tucson. I'm James Castaneda, the program coordinator here at the city. And we are joined by two of our engineering associates, Julie Davis and Angel Vindiola. And also our administrator, Todd Kessler, is present.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thanks for being here, guys. All right. With that, why don't we, we'll go to, looks like Town of Oro Valley is with us. Walter.
Hey, good morning. Walter
Hey,
Jackson
guys.
with the Town of Oro Valley. And we also have Mark Navarro on the line as well.
All right. Thanks, guys. Do we have anybody here from Marana this morning? All right. We will reach out to Marana and get them updated and get them involved in the future as well. All right. Do we have anyone from South Tucson today? Okay. Do we have anyone from Sahuarita? Is John with us or anyone? Don't think so. Okay. All right, let's move on to the TO Nation.
Samuel Orozco, Project Administrator for TO Nation.
Wonderful.
Good to be here.
For being here. Do we have anyone from Pascuyaki today? I think there may have been a conflict for Jason Bahi, but I'm not sure if there's anyone else from Pascuyaki today. All right. Well, I think that will do it for introductions. If there's anyone that I missed, please, now's the time to let us know you're here. And my apologies for skipping over you. And just to let you know, we do have a few PAG staff with us that are helping us kind of ramp this program back up and provide support for all of you. So you may see some names in the list. We're trying to provide a wide array of support so that we can help you guys out and keep you coordinated on your pavement management activities. So with that, why don't we go ahead, we'll move on to agenda item 2, in-kind reporting. So I'll go ahead and read the slide here just to make sure we cover all of that. Regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you're paid with federal dollars, please let us know. Time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAG, RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. All right. Well, it looks like the housekeeping is largely out of the way. So let's go ahead and move on to agenda item 3. This is a standing agenda item that is intended to allow for some update and discussion in regards to the Regional Pavement Management Program that is under PAG's work program and administered on behalf of PAG member agencies by Tucson Department of Transportation and Mobility. So we will be moving toward renewing the agreement that PAG has with the city of Tucson for the coming fiscal year. We're a little bit ahead of that at this point in time. Nothing to do on that just yet, but that's coming up. And I'd like to throw the hot potato over to James and company to give us an update on collection activities, availability of data, what kind of challenges you guys are facing, and what's coming up for you in the quarter ahead.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you everyone for meeting this morning. So let me just go over some quick bullets to address those questions. So in terms of the 2021 collection cycle, collection has been completed. The pavement team here in Tucson is still in the process of applying an office pacer rating to that data. So looking at it, we do apply a field pacer, but then when we get to the office, the data is processed. We get additional images from the LCMS system, and then we are able to look at it again through that more specified lens with the LCMS data. So we are still in the process of field verifying, or excuse me, office verifying those field ratings. We did perform the 2022 preventative maintenance on the ARAN vehicle. So that was done the week of February 7th through the 11th of last month. We had our vendor from Fugro come down to City of Tucson and spent the full week recalibrating and adjusting the van equipment. With that, the report which they provide is not yet complete. They still are working on that. There are some additional data points that they need from us, from some of our control sites. So we're working with them to get that finalized, hopefully here in the next couple of weeks. That will be good to go. And in terms of the team itself, right now we are a 3-person pavement team. We had one of our engineering associates, John Lynn, got a promotional opportunity with Tucson, so he has left the pavement team. I've reached out to our HR department to try and fill that vacancy, but as of right now, it's still in queue and no work has been done moving towards getting that position filled up, squared away. So it's myself and 2 other engineering associates, current team status. And just speaking to some of the challenges, it was brought up in our preventative maintenance that there could be opportunities, the vendor mentioned, to address some of the aging equipment on the van. I think this might, though, be a good opportunity as a group to kind of talk through what that could look like and where we could potentially what that looks like moving forward, because the van is now was procured in 2012, so 10 years old. In terms of mileage, the van is, not fairly broken in, but in terms of the equipment, onboard lasers, there's a lot of room there, that a lot of room for improvement. The technology has grown substantially since the current ARAN 9000, and I think it might be worthwhile to talk here as a group about what that looks like moving forward. And Todd, I see, if I missed anything, please feel free to chime in.
No, James, I don't think you missed anything, but just to kind of call that out, what James just said, there's maybe multiple paths here, but I think we really, as a task force here, should talk about, does it make sense we're going to need a new vehicle and new equipment, right? It's 10 years old. We would need to put those into the TIP program and have, last time it was $1 million plus, I think, Paul, to procure a new vehicle. But I think there's maybe another path that is kind of, I don't know that the writing's on the wall, but perhaps it makes more sense that we get out of the business of owning and operating an ARAN vehicle. And I don't want to step out of bounds as far as what the funding's earmarked for, but it may make a lot more sense to not have the city of Tucson administer the program on behalf of the region, but move to contract services. And we are then just a customer like every other regional jurisdiction to receive this data with a bow on it from another contractor delivering data. And speaking of challenges, owning and operating, there's so much overhead here, right? You got to make sure daily we're checking the vehicle on control sites before you make any collection. You got to do all the tire pressure checks, the laser cleaning, the sensor cleaning, so on and so forth, the annual PMs. There's that's zero data, right? That's zero data. And it's a lot of time to continue to maintain that. We got our team, a small team, right? James just alluded to, lost another staff member to a promotional opportunity, but you got to play mechanic to remove equipment to get new tires. You get new tires, you got to recalibrate the whole vehicle, so on and so forth. I don't need to get into the nitty and gritty, but I sure would support if the opportunity is there to move toward contracting this out as so. No OWP agreement, I would think, Paul. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but perhaps not having that agreement between the city, but rather a task force driven contract services to receive data. I think that's how like orthophotography is perhaps collected at the PAG level, at least. I know some jurisdictions go get their own. But I think now's the opportunity to have that conversation if that's the way to go forth. We've heard some struggles and challenges from the member jurisdictions not getting what they need or to the level of what they need. And we could fill that void perhaps by removing costs of overhead to own the vehicle. I don't need to get long-winded. I think you got the idea there, but as James said, some conversation here as a task force. I do understand, James and his team do charge time to federal pass-through dollars, right? When they're operating the vehicle, that would go away. The city would just have them as standard employees. But I think from the experience, my recommendation is we take a serious look at moving the monies and earmark it for consultant contractor data collection. I'll stop there.
Well, this is exactly the conversation that we're hoping to have with you guys, because we do need to prepare for the future. And if that makes sense to do that with the business model we're doing, owning, managing, and operating and maintaining a van, fine. If there's a better business model with a data as a service type of approach, we certainly want to explore that. You did mention that we need to make sure that funding is lined up appropriately within the TIP. So we will certainly have to start looking at that. We're going to begin the TIP development cycle this summer. And so that will look at, I believe it will look at the fiscal 23 to fiscal 28 TIP time period. And so within that time period, with your help, we'll all need to figure out, is there typically, I think there's roughly 450,000 or so for the program needs on a regular annual basis. When we purchased the van in 2012, that became a bump year reflected in the TIP program where we said we need 1 point whatever million for the purchase and continued funding of staffing needs. So we'll need to figure out what that looks like, when that should hit, if we're going to indeed migrate over to a business model that looks at data as a service. And within the agenda, what I've asked for under the next agenda item is we want to hear a little bit more about some of the experiences that jurisdictions are having with data acquisition and use. So we've asked Pima County to kind of give us an overview. We're welcoming other jurisdictions to chime in during that agenda item. And certainly we want to learn from both ADOT and from Pima County, who I think are a little bit further ahead than the rest of us on acquiring data and putting it to use for pavement management. So those are certainly things that we need to talk about, and we need to consider what that looks like, what the timing is for all of that, and how it all fits together. So I think that's, you know, I want to have this conversation. I'm not quite sure if it's better for us to try to work that some of those details out offline with a smaller group, just to talk through, you know, the what and the when and the how's this going to happen and what the timing of all of it looks like. But I would certainly welcome any thoughts, ideas, concerns at this point in time to talk about if a migration of a business model seems to be something that makes sense from your perspective as the practitioners.
I'll just hop on to echo what Todd said. I think the city is in agreement, or at least our team is in agreement with what Todd said, and would be definitely willing and wanting to work with you, Paul, and the other members to kind of see what that looks like moving forward.
Todd, you also mentioned the orthophoto approach. I think that's probably really a good model for us to take a closer look at, because that is, there's both dollars that we get through our PAG channels, as well as contributory sources from the stakeholders who want to contribute to the acquisition of orthophoto data. So that may be a perfect blend, especially, and I'm thinking about the dichotomy between our focus on regional roadways and your needs to take care of all of your roadways from the locals all the way through. I'm not sure how that balance should or would work out. So that may be something we have to talk through. If you all want locals all the way up collected, then we need to figure out what the costs look like on that and what the contribution scheme might look like from the local agency to the regional funding pot, all the way through. So I want to go to Jeremy, but first I want to welcome Jason Bahi, who joined us from Pasquayaki. Thanks for joining us, Jason. And looks like we're trying to get Jose in. I think he is in the Teams room. So I'm going to jump over and send him a quick message. Jeremy, it's all yours.
I know, I think what Todd was mentioning, you know, has a lot of merit, you know, just within a lot of different services that, you know, ADOT does, you know, internally, you know, we've jumped over to more of a consultant type of a program. The one thing I could maybe suggest is has somebody looked at, you know, what the cost is, you know, of owning this van, maintaining it, all the, you know, the overhead and the resources that go into it versus what the cost would be if we went with like a contract type of thing. You know, it's just to kind of, because obviously if we go with the contract, you know, I would think it would be their responsibility to make sure that they service that equipment, keep that equipment maintained, updated, and keep it new with new technology and stuff like that. So there's got to be some kind of cost associated with that. So, you know, I don't know if anybody's looked at, you know, the cost in-house versus going consultant. And I guess that's one. And then number two, you know, my apologies. I've been trying to get a hold of Robert Bush. I need to get a hold of him and try to see if I can get him to give us an update on how ADOT manages their stuff a little bit more in depth than what I know, because he kind of manages that program. So if we know when that next meeting is, I know it's been a few months since we met the first time, but if I can get that date kind of locked in a little bit earlier on, that way I can give him an update and what we're trying to do so he can kind of prepare something for us. Because unfortunately, I don't know everything he does, because he manages everything across the state. And so it's just a big area. So if I can get those dates, I can bring him in, let him kind of talk on behalf of what we do internally, what we do with consultants, and how we kind of do things. So.
Absolutely. We'd like to give you guys a little bit more lead time on the frequency of meetings and whatnot. So I'll kind of leave that to you as a task force to if you want to facilitate that conversation today, then we can get into that. We can also do it offline. If you want us to aim for late May or some other time period, we can look at it as well. All right. Also, I had a couple questions, James, on, you mentioned the at-desk data review for PASER rating. So can you kind of clarify for us, does that mean you're doing the laser collection and PASER of the federal aid network, and then you're desk checking that PASER rating, or are you PASER rating local roadways, or what are you doing there?
So it would be all related to the federal aid network. So in the van, a 2-person operation, the passenger will apply a PASER rating as we drive and collect. That data then gets imported, and when that data, the laser data is processed, we look at it again in the office to ensure that what the individual hit out in the field in terms of a PASER rating matches what they're seeing when they have the additional data of the LCMS images, so the cracking, distress imagery, to make sure they kind of add up, because sometimes you're out in the field and certain paved surfaces, you look at it and you may not see the extent of cracking when you're driving, 50, 60 miles per hour on kind of rural roads. And it just helps with that process.
Okay, that makes sense. I just want to clarify what you're dealing with. Now, do you also do PASER rating for your local roadways? Can you remind me of that?
Yes, so the PASER rating is the rating system we use for local roads.
For locals, okay. And my understanding, and we'll probably hear a little bit more about this on the next agenda item, but I believe that Pima County has moved completely off of PASER rating, and the data acquisition is what they're using for the locals all the way through the major roadways. Are there others that have migrated off of PASER rating, or is that it amongst this group? Do we know? All right.
Hey, Paul, can I just add or clarify a couple things?
Please.
But the PASER rating that James and team are doing is contained within the city limits. There is no PASER rating for regional local streets that is occurring right now.
Right.
We're operating, just saying that to make sure we're
No,
operating
understanding
that the jurisdictions are kind of managing that. Now, when it comes to the ARAN, right, this PASER rating, that's stuff everybody wants to get away from. In the ARAN, it's a subjective, if you will, right? Windshield survey. I mean, it's based upon objective data, but it's still got some subjectivity to it. The office work and cleanup, if you will, just the way to report the software that stating PASER ratings in the office that James and crew, that doesn't happen. But because we are not offering or interpreting an overall condition index, this magical 0 to 100 number for all the jurisdictions, it offers a check and balance, if you will, for any analysis that may occur for rutting, cracks that the jurisdictions may interpret, right? If you take this ARAN data that is delivered on the federal aid routes and try to say, well, I want 30% rutting and 40% crack data, I want to kind of check that versus a PASER rating, that's what it covers. The data could be offered much more frequent or quickly post the cycle if we don't do the windshield QC in the office. But it is kind of that check. Now, the magical OCI, right? That's where I understand the county and the Marana hired a consultant, and they did receive that. That's kind of what goes into that. It's like everybody's chili recipe may be different, right? This would be something we'd have to talk about as a committee here for if we were to go out to contract or consultant services, what are we asking for? Because it can be a wide array of things. It could be, and that will impact the cost. So that kind of goes back, Jeremy, to you mentioned, have we looked at costs? I don't know that we need to get into that right now, but the costs that we've looked at for collection are quite high. per mile. And to actually compare that to contractor costs, we need to know, what are they doing? What is that contractor price, right? I know some numbers were thrown out previously from, I think, Catherine or Pima County on how much it costs to get their local streets, but we don't know, is that apples to apples if we compare those data points? And that's really what we'd have to hone in on to, I think, to properly compare costs, and or for getting costs from somebody to provide that data as a service, using Paul's words, right? What are we asking for? And we would need to define that. What's important for our jurisdiction? Do we need the 50 data points, or do we need 3? And that'll be, anyways, getting long-winded, but I wanted to clarify in the Pacer stuff, and in being able to do local street inspections for the regional jurisdictions. This is a challenge. We can't get there, right? We just can't get there given the continual staff training and turnover and the overhead of the vehicles. Unfortunately, we can't do it. And that's where I think it's just more pressure toward moving toward data as a service. But I do want to hear the other jurisdictions. So I'll be quiet.
No, thanks for that clarification, Todd. That was really helpful. And you're absolutely right. We will need to put in the effort to make sure that we're clear on what the scope request would be for going out for a data acquisition. Are we looking for what kind of data? And then, as you mentioned, what kind of data processing on the back end? Are we looking for a universal base level OCI for everyone? And then if you want to add on top of that, if the city of Tucson or Oro Valley wants something a little bit different, then you can do that. But maybe we establish a base level overall condition index that's common across all jurisdictions, and then jurisdictions can have jurisdiction specific pavement condition index or overall condition index. We'll have to work through all those issues for sure. But
and Paul,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Paul, I omitted one thing I wanted to mention. I don't know if this is future, right? Future conversation, but whether it may be opportunistic to look at, can we work with ADOT's contract and maybe expand when we get a better price model? If we're able, I believe ADOT, right? You have a contract for data as a service. Perhaps it's embodied into that. I don't know. It just may be something to look at where we can maybe get a better price with quantity. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good thought. We want to learn from both Pima County, and then, we'll work with Jeremy to get ADOT staff down here for the next meeting. And we'll want to see if we can get a little bit further on answers to some of those questions. I know that ADOT's traditionally been really good about allowing local agencies and COGS and MPOs to buy off contracts whenever that option is available. So they're really pretty cooperative on that side, and I'm sure that would be a fruitful conversation. But at this point, I'd like to open it up. If there's anything that, welcome Jose. If anyone from Oro Valley or TO Nation or Pascuyaki or Pima County want to add anything, please let us know.
Hello, this is Jason Bahe from Pascuyaki. So I just started here a little over a couple years ago. Prior to that, I worked for the county, as some of you know. And so I'm new to this committee, and I just wanted to know, like, is there some information that could be sent out emailed to me to find out what services are available and what the organization, what the committee does as far as pavement management. And obviously I have local collectors mostly on the reservation here, and I just wanted to know what the committee does, and maybe a mission statement or whatever. So
Yep.
If I can get that information, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, we'd be happy to send some info. What I'll likely do is I'd like to connect with James and Todd and make sure that we can properly summarize the services that are provided by Tucson Department of Transportation and Mobility as services to the PAG member agencies for the Regional Pavement Management Program. Largely, it's focused on data acquisition and availability for the local agencies and their use to establish and manage their own individual pavement management programs. That's kind of where PAG has found a comfort level of helping the jurisdictions, but not really getting into the business of managing your assets or telling you how to manage your assets. We leave that to you. So that's generally kind of the gist of it. This group has been working for several years now. There was a hiatus over the last 5 years or so with not a lot of meetings or activities. We're trying to get this group together again, especially at this pivotal moment where we are anticipating a potential change to the business model, which would lead us away from maintaining a van to collect data with and look at options to have data collected on our behalf by a third party. So that's kind of generally the ins and outs of it, but I'll work with James and his group and pull information from our work program and other content and get some information out to you, Jason. And maybe what I'll do is send that to everybody just so everybody has kind of a base level of what is this task force and what is this program. And as you need to consult with others and bring others into this mix, that may be a good set of resources for you.
If you could, again, Jason, if you could send like an email as our website or a link as well to like say different websites that I can access to see if reservation roads are on the inventory as well. Appreciate that.
All right. Before I open it up to other jurisdictions, I do want to kind of just plant the seed with James and company about as we're thinking about this potential migration to data as a service, what does the collection schedule look like, say, over the next 5 years or so, maybe even all the way out to fiscal 28? I guess just start thinking about that so that we can figure out what the timing might look like to not be in the middle of something when we're trying to make a transition from an old business model to a new business model, but we can wrap it as tightly as we can and say, all right, let's do the data acquisition for say fiscal 26 or whatever it is, get that done, get it processed, and then the next cycle we'll look at data as a service, for example. So I just kind of wanted to make sure that I mentioned that and you start putting some thought into what the right moment of timing might be as we're exploring these options. All right. Anything else from any others on the pavement management work program and the coordination? We'll get information out to you, Jason, and share it with others. And as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. I know James Castaneda and company are open for contact as well and are really responsive if there's any questions, needs, or concerns. So feel free to reach out to us and we'll help any way we can.
Hey, Paul, Sam here with the TO Nation.
Hi, Sam.
Yeah, I just have a question. I know we are under the BIA, but I also understand that City of Tucson and Pima County also might help in some areas like in San Javier district. I just want to understand the data collection and all that. How is that gonna benefit us here on the main nation?
Well, I can start a little bit of that conversation and then, I'll ask James and Todd to correct me because I'll likely need correcting. But generally speaking, what we work on is the federal aid network. And so that's where the collection of data is focused. What happens beyond that in terms of aid or support from Pima County or City of Tucson, that may be happening outside of our program in a one-on-one exchange with the City of Tucson or Pima County. But generally speaking, this program currently focuses on data collection using the regional pavement management van on the federal aid network. As we look at a new business model, we know that there's interest from the jurisdiction member agencies that you all have needs beyond just the federal aid network. You need to manage the pavement for all of your own roadways and assets. And so we will want to make sure that we have that conversation and see what the options are. If there's interest in going beyond the federal aid network, we want to see if that's a real option, what the funding limitations for something like that might look like, whether we can explore something similar to an orthophoto contribution business model where there's some federal and regional dollars, and then there's some local agency contribution that goes beyond to make a more comprehensive data acquisition. So I think there's option moving forward. We'll need to explore it, but currently the collection is limited to the federal aid network. So there's likely not collection taking place through our program for some of those BIs. James, Todd, did I misspeak there too much, or?
No, Paul, I think you covered that very well. That was all accurate to my knowledge. Yeah.
And Sam, if you need details on that or checking of particular roadways, I'm going to probably steer you toward James and company. They're the ones that really understand the network in the detail that you might need in order to figure out if a particular roadway or a segment of a particular roadway is being collected, has been collected, or might be collected in the future.
Thank you, Jay.
This is Jason again. So there is, I believe, a website that I can access to determine whether or not any of the roads on Pasquayaki are on the federal aid network, correct?
That is correct.
If that's the case, then if you would send me a link
Yeah,
to
we
that.
can send that out as
I
well.
Googled it, yeah. So, and I'm trying to muddle my way through all the Google hits, so.
Yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head, but I know that ADOT has served up the most current federal aid network.
Okay.
Really, they are the keepers of what the federal classification looks like
Okay.
for roadways throughout the state. And they did a full-scale statewide rebalancing in the last few years, because when they looked at the federal aid composition of the state of Arizona in comparison to other states throughout the country, there was kind of an imbalance of light on some roadways and too much of other roadways. So they went through a whole effort and they did kind of a wholesale rebalancing. So they're the maintainers of that. I know we've got that website, and we'll make sure to get that out to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just was thanking you.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Anyone else before we move on to agenda item 4? All right, let's do it. So we've started a little bit of this conversation, but this agenda item is intended to talk a little bit more detailed on what pavement data acquisition and use looks like. We know the current model uses the van, collects pavement data for the federal aid network. We've also heard that there is migration to a new business model. ADOT and Pima County have acquired data for their use. And so we've asked Pima County to speak to this. And then what we'd like to do after that is open it up for any other jurisdictions to give us an update on either your interest, your involvement, or any questions you might have on pavement data acquisition and its use, and take the conversation in that direction. So with that, if I can ask Crystal to bring up slides that Michelle shared with us, I'll hand it over to Michelle, and Michelle, go ahead and take it away and give us a little bit of information about Pima County's experience on your data acquisition, the development of your PCI, and the use of your data, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Thank you, Paul. As Paul mentioned, I'm Michelle Montano. I am the program manager for our pavement management program at Pima County. And so where we started was with PASER ratings. And as we discussed earlier in the meeting, this is more of a qualitative than a quantitative measure. It's subjective. And it has a rating scale of 1 to 10. When we started looking at this, some of our PASER ratings were over 10 years old. And with the advent of our 10-year program to get everything up to date and really focus on our pavement management, we wanted something that was a more data-driven and defensible pavement rating system. So that's when we decided to make the jump over to PCI. That happened in 2019. So the PCI condition index is a American Society for Testing Materials, has a published standard that came out in 1999 and then was updated again in 2018. This PCI quantifies the pavement condition based off of 19 different types of asphalt distresses. And the PCI is calculated through a mathematical formula of the measured size of the distress and the distress severity. So the van collects using a whole bunch of different types of sensors, all of this information, and then plugs it into a calculation that spits out our PCI. The standard PCI rating is from fail to good. We have simplified this for our own use into 4 categories. But I will talk a little bit more about that later. Oops, sorry, too far. So in 2019, we contracted with IMS, Infrastructure Management Services. This was through a cooperative agreement, and we had them collect all 1,900 miles of paved roads. So that included arterial, collector, and local roads. We asked for continuous linear survey, not just sampling of all these roads. If it was a divided highway or a divided roadway, then they had to collect both sides separately. And we received PCI ratings, which averaged the sampling over the course of the section. So we have all of our roadways broken into management segments, which typically falls with how it was constructed and what time it was constructed and what kind of treatment. So we have 6,460 different roadway segments that we received individual PCI ratings for. The contract was awarded in August. They got notice to proceed and started collecting data in October, and then we're complete with all the data collection by December. So the total contract cost was $258,000. Excuse me. That also included some additional follow-up that we did on a couple of other roads in following years. I think $216,000 was the initial data collection effort. From that, we were able to compare. We compared our PASER PCI versus our average PCI just to see if we were in the right ballpark. And overall, it was pretty consistent between the different. The big change was in the local, and all of this gets plugged into, or we plugged into our management software, which is Street Saver, which allows us to look at the roadway network health as a whole. And then from that, we can also generate benefit cost analysis and other metrics that we use for evaluating our program and ranking our roads. Through the PTAC program or process, we have established that we are doing our arterial collectors on a cost benefit analysis ranking. So biggest bang for the buck is where we tend to get our money and focus, both from a mill and replace as well as from a surface treatment perspective. The first 3 years of our program, we've done the local roads as a worst first. So the one with the lowest PCI gets addressed first, and then we grab the other roads within that subdivision in order to, have some type of consistency and production and efficiency built into that. And when we started the PCI back in 2020, that was the first year we started with PCIs. That road was a 15. We are now up into the 36, 37 PCI for our worst road. And kind of how we've been gauging our success is in the pothole requests that we've seen coming in. So we've seen a significant drop since the start of our 2020 10-year plan in the pothole requests that are coming in. So a lot of that has to do with just the amount of old local roads that we have been able to get accomplished. And then some of the lessons learned is in allocating funding based off of we did it based off of a system of equity worst first methodology. Because a lot of our failed roads were in that local subdivision realm, it's a very personal. And we wanted to have that data to be able to say why we were picking one over another. And having that quantifiable number that we can stand behind was, I think, very important for both the department as well as for our Pima County Transportation Advisory Committee. The graphic packaging also has helped allow us to package things in a meaningful way to keep contractors from kind of chasing their tail all over the county, because this is a countywide program. We are spread out throughout the whole county. And so we've had some flexibility there. And then one of the other things we've learned is when we have funds left over at the end of the day, it requires a little bit more planning than expected, just because of the packaging that involved with the worst first methodology that we're using, of having to grab those roads, identify the whole subdivision, those kinds of things. We have had a lot of success. We've had a lot of support from our administration and from the Board of Supervisors as far as the process and being able to stand behind our process. It has taken a lot of the, I guess, politics, a little bit out of that. Obviously, there's still political pressure and everybody wants their roads done first, but we do have something that we're willing to stand behind as well as the Board of Supervisors. And we've been able to stick with that and defend that process. We are going to be going out this fall for another contract to collect PCIs again. We want to be able to compare those, see how our PCI ratings are going. Part of the process in Street Saver is a degradation curve. So we want to see if our current 3 year, and we've got 3 years in now. So we want to be able to compare what we've done versus that PCI curve to see if that degradation is appropriate or if we need to make adjustments there. And just to see an overall progress. So yeah, I think we've had very positive experience with the data-driven approach. So any questions?
So Michelle, when you mentioned that the PCI has changed from 15 to 30, that's based on the curve model that you have, or is it based on before data and after data collected for the condition?
So that's the progress we've made. So when we first started the 10-year program, our lowest PCI road was a 15. Now we're up into the 36, 37 PCI. And each year we keep picking a little bit more off the bottom as far as the local road PCI.
So is that come from the contractor giving you a rating upon completion of the repave, or where does the after number come from, I guess?
The after number comes from, we have plugged into the system. When we get a road complete, we update that maintenance record in Street Saver. It re-rates that to 100% for a mill and overlay.
Okay.
And then puts that back onto a new degradation curve.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And then the new acquisition in the fall will kind of truth test
Correct.
how close your curve is. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Great. Surely there has to be questions.
I can always ask questions. Was hoping somebody.
Michelle, Michelle,
go
this was
ahead.
with the town of War Valley. Are you guys just doing mill and overlays in the county?
We are primarily doing mill and overlays. So far, our committee has wanted to focus on mill and overlay for the local roads. We are hoping to have that conversation with them again and discuss the possibility of doing some surface treatments on the local roads starting in 2024. That way we can start preserving the new roads that we have paved on the local side. We do have both mill and overlay as well as pavement surface treatments on our arterial collector network based off of the analysis Street Saver runs for us.
So if you were doing a fog seal, what kind of points would you give a road afterwards, after the treatment?
I would have to look in this program itself, but it has some recommended adjustment factors. And I think it's more than just a set. You gain 3 PCI per fog seal. I think it's based off the previous condition of the road as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Todd?
I see your hand up.
Yeah,
in.
so Michelle, this may be for future conversation, but just out of curiosity, did IMS, when you received the data from, did you get the detailed distresses or just the PCI overall PCI score?
I would have to look into that. I know we had everything pushed over electronically. I know I have a drive sitting in my desk of all of the pictures and things that were collected along with it. I don't know what kind of raw data we received. I was not actually involved in the program at the time. And unfortunately, everybody who was is now left. But
no, I get it. So, I guess it was kind of the comparison because anything can go into the PCI or OCI scores, but some of the stresses I would expect the regional van, their data points to look at. But yeah, that's fine. It's a different conversation. And say, I guess a part B, you did receive some imagery with it.
that's correct.
Cool.
Yeah. I think as a follow-up, we will want to know a little bit more about the details of the data. And then if we can maybe ultimately look at that compared to what ADOT gets from their collection and figure out what would fit best for the local agency's use, that might be a good approach.
Yeah, I could definitely dig that information out.
Great. And then you spoke about the geographic packaging. Did you get a lot of valuable input from the contractor community that helped you reshape that, or did you kind of have a feel already for the shortfalls of your initial approach that led you to packaging it a little bit more wisely? What was your experience there?
I think this has definitely been a learning curve over the last 3 years. The first year in 2020, we were doing local road packages separate from our arterial collector packages. Because they are different as far as function and what we're requiring, we allow them to mill ahead a little bit in local roads because of just the tight spaces that they're working in and the access issues. On arterial collectors, we ask them to put back what they take out that same day, so that the roadways are open up at night. Last year and this year, we have combined those into one package. And I think from a mobilization perspective, it's been helpful. And we've gotten good feedback, I think, from our contractors on the process. Obviously, we garner feedback from them continuously. We're actually, polling all of our contractors right now on what language, what process is working well, what's not, moving forward into fiscal year 23 to continue to fine tune that process.
Very good. All right. Any other questions for Michelle?
Jose with Santa Barbara Valley. One last
Please.
question for Michelle.
Yeah.
So you're anticipating going out every 3 years to redo your roads to get an update on the distresses on the roads?
I'm not sure that we've settled on a specific cycle right now. I know we wanted to get back out there to see where we were at. And I think depending on the results and how closely it fits to what Street Saver was estimating for our degradation cycle, we'll have to see if we need to do it more frequently to continue to tune that up, or if we're comfortable with where it's at and how often we want to recheck.
Thanks.
Jeremy, do you happen to know what kind of frequency ADOT is collecting on, or I'm sure we can get that information later, but.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what their frequency is. Like I said, I want to get with Robert and get him in here to kind of give the same kind of presentation. So that way we can kind of compare apples to apples and see what we can do.
All right. Do you have a feel for the time target we should aim at for pulling something like that together? And I guess I'll open this up to all of you so that we can maybe avoid some of the summer vacations and that kind of thing and not let it hang too long. Should we pull ADOT in and make sure Michelle's in the room and we get Marana and Sarita and some others involved in this conversation?
Yeah, I would recommend let's target the next meeting for about a month out. I wouldn't want to go any more than that because then we just start forgetting what we talked about the last meeting. So let's that way it'll give me a couple weeks to let Robert, get things kind of straightened out on what we're looking for. So I would say within another month we should be meeting again.
Any thoughts from the group on that?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, we'll throw some options out to you guys for the mid-late April timeframe, and we'll see what fits best for everyone, and then we'll lock that down as soon as we can. All right. Any other jurisdictional folks want to provide any update on, data use and acquisition, whether those are interests, concerns, questions, anything else? I think we'll have to also give some thought to if we're gonna think seriously about a business model migration to data as a service. We recognize the varying levels of staff resources, capabilities, those types of things that exist at different jurisdictions. So we'll need to be very deliberate in making sure that we can lift everyone up to a certain level of data processing and use so that it's of value to even the very smallest jurisdictions. We don't really need to get into that now, but that's just more food for thought. We don't want to just get a bunch of data and then dump it in the laps of folks that are not equipped, staffed, or knowledgeable enough to work their way all the way through putting that data to use. So we'll need to give that some good thought. Anything else?
Hey, Jeremy, is the ADOT, are they doing PCIs or Pacers? Do you know?
I need to get with Robert. I just don't know because they manage it, for the whole state. And it's managed under like a completely different group within ADOT. It's not even, they don't even report to the district. It's a whole different group. So I got to get with him and understand. I'm gonna actually bring him in and let him explain the process, because it's just not something we do at the district level.
Hi, Jeremy.
To my knowledge, I don't think ADOT has ever really been in the Pazer business. I don't think they've been doing windshield survey for quite a while, if they were doing it previously, but we'll hear more details from the group on that. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Yes, Todd.
Yeah, sorry for, I like to click the hand, I guess.
That's fine.
Just in terms of timing and the data service conversations, Paul, you mentioned it kind of kick off the meeting here. It is that time for renewing the agreement between PAG and the city of Tucson. June, I think it expires. Timelines, I suppose it's looking like just kind of status quo renewal, I would think. Our vendor contract with Fugro for like maintenance is the end of April. So just, I guess I'm just throwing that out there in terms of timing. There's more conversations that need to be had. It's not realistic to look at, could we look at next fiscal year as a data as service? That's too optimistic, or not unrealistic, maybe is the better word. Am I fair in saying that?
You know,
Too many.
I defer to you guys. And that's the question I'm kind of posing to James in terms of the timing. I think there's going to be a little bit more upfront preparation for the full migration to retire the van and move to a new business model and such. So off the cuff, I would expect that we would kind of rinse and repeat next fiscal year while we kind of get prepared for the following fiscal year, or even after that, to do a data acquisition. So it might look like Pima County doing their facilities this fall. Meanwhile, the regional program keeps running till, at a minimum, the following fall, or maybe even later than that.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds good.
You know, I think we'll just have to have this conversation and figure out what timing looks best. But I think it's going to take a little longer than, you know, a quick turnaround. We're going to need some preparation.
Yeah, I just kind of trying to put those timelines out for the whole year.
All right, folks. Well, if there is nothing else, then we will go ahead and move to adjournment, and we'll be in touch with some meeting date options for the late April timeframe. And in the meantime, we'll get information out to all of you, and don't hesitate to contact myself or James and company if you have any questions or needs. Thanks all.
Thanks everyone.
Paul,
Have a good
thanks.
day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.